made some resistance, so that the Spaniard took his cutlass, and beat and wounded him without mercy. Nicholai asked him why he did it. The fellow answered, I will let you know, and took up the cook's axe and gave him a cut on the head which nearly deprived him of life. Then they ordered Captain Orgamar to leave his vessel, allowing him his trunk, and turned him ashore, to seek for himself. Nicholai begged them to dismiss him with his captain, but no, no, was the answer, for they had no complete navigator but him. After Captain Orgamar was gone, they put in his stead the present brave, or as I shall call him cowardly, Captain Jonnia, who headed them in plundering the before mentioned brig, and made Bolidar their first lieutenant, and then proceeded down among those keys or islands where I was captured. This is the amount of what my friend Nickola told me of their history. Saturday, 22d. Both vessels under way standing to the eastward. They ran the Exertion aground on a bar, but after throwing overboard most of her deck load of shooks, she floated off. A pilot was sent to her, and she was run into a narrow creek between two keys, where they moored her head and stern alongside of the mangrove trees, set down her yards and topmasts, and covered her mastheads and shrouds with bushes to prevent her being seen by vessels which might pass that way. I was then suffered to go on board my own vessel, and found her in a very filthy condition, sails torn, rigging cut to pieces, and everything in the cabin in waste and confusion. The swarms of mosquitoes and sandflies made it impossible to get any sleep or rest. The pirates' large boat was armed and manned under Bolidar, and sent off with letters to a merchant, as they called him, by the name of Dominico, residing in a town called Principe, on the main island of Cuba. I was told by one of them, who could speak English, that Principe was a very large and populous town, situated at the head of St. Maria, which was about 20 miles northeast from where we lay, and the keys lying around us were called Cotton Keys. The captain pressed into his service Francis de Sous, one of my crew, saying that he was one of his countrymen. Francis was very reluctant in going, and said to me with tears in his eyes, I shall do nothing but what I am obliged to do, and will not aid in the least to hurt you or the vessel. I am very sorry to leave you. He was immediately put on duty, and Thomas Goodall sent back to the Exertion. Sunday, 23d. Early this morning a large number of the pirates came on board of the Exertion, threw out the long boat, broke open the hatches, and took out considerable of the cargo, in search of rum, gin, &c., still telling me, I had some and they would find it, uttering the most awful profaneness. In the afternoon their boat returned with a pirogue, having on board the captain, his first lieutenant, and 7 men of a patriot or piratical vessel that was chased ashore at Cape Cruz by a Spanish armed brig. These 7 men made their escape in said boat, and after 4 days, found our pirates and joined them, the remainder of the crew being killed or taken prisoners. Monday, 24th. Their boat was manned, and sent to the before mentioned town. I was informed by a line from Nickola, that the pirates had a man on board, a native of Principe, who, in the garb of a sailor, was a partner with Dominico, but I could not get sight of him. This lets us a little into the plans by which this atrocious system of piracy has been carried on. Merchants having partners on board of these pirates. Thus pirates at sea and robbers on land are associated to destroy the peaceful trader. The willingness exhibited by the 7 above mentioned men, to join our gang of pirates, seems to look like a general understanding among them. And from their being merchants on shore so base as to encourage the plunder and vend the goods, I am persuaded there has been a systematic confederacy on the part of these unprincipled desperadoes, under cover of the patriot flag, and those on land are no better than those on the sea. If the governments to whom they belong know of the atrocities committed, and I have but little doubt they do, they deserve the execration of all mankind. Thursday, 27th. A gang of the pirates came and stripped our masts of the green bushes, saying she appeared more like a sail than trees, took 1 barrel of bread and 1 of potatoes, using about 1 of each every day. I understood they were waiting for boats to take the cargo, for the principal merchant had gone to Trinidad. Sunday, 30th. The beginning of trouble. This day, which peculiarly reminds Christians of the high duties of compassion and benevolence, was never observed by these pirates. This, of course, we might expect, as they did not often know when the day came, and if they knew it, it was spent in gambling. The old saying among seamen, "No Sunday off soundings," was not thought of, and even this poor plea was not theirs, for they were on soundings and often at anchor. Early this morning the merchant, as they called him, came with a large boat for the cargo. I was immediately ordered into the boat with my crew, not allowed any breakfast, and carried about 3 miles to a small island out of sight of the Exertion, and left there by the side of a little pond of thick muddy water, which proved to be very brackish, with nothing to eat but a few biscuits. One of the boat's men told us the merchant was afraid of being recognized, and when he had gone the boat would return for us. But we had great reason to apprehend they would deceive us, and therefore passed the day in the utmost anxiety. At night, however, the boats came, and took us again on board the Exertion, when to our surprise and astonishment, we found they had broken open the trunks and chests, and taken all our wearing apparel, not even leaving a shirt or pair of pantaloons, nor sparing a small miniature of my wife which was in my trunk. The little money I and my mate had, with some belonging to the owners, my mate had previously distributed about the cabin in 3 or 4 parcels, while I was on board the pirate, for we dare not keep it about us. One parcel in a butter pot they did not discover. Amidst the hurry with which I was obliged to go to the before mentioned island, I fortunately snatched my vessel's papers, and hid them in my bosom, which the reader will find was a happy circumstance for me. My writing desk, with papers, accounts, etc., all Mr. Lord's letters, the gentleman to whom my cargo was consigned, and several others were taken and maliciously destroyed. My medicine chest, which I so much wanted, was kept for their own use. What their motive could be to take my papers I could not imagine, except they had hopes of finding bills of lading for some Spaniards, to clear them from piracy. Mr. Bracket had some notes and papers of consequence to him, which shared the same fate. My quadrant, charts, books, and bedding were not yet taken, but I found it impossible to hide them, and they were soon gone from my sight. Tuesday, January 1st, 1822. A sad New Year's Day to me. Before breakfast orders came for me to cut down the Exertion's railing and bulwarks on one side, for their vessel to heave out by and clean her bottom. On my hesitating a little they observed with anger, "Very well, captain, suppose you no do it quick, we do it for you." Directly afterwards another boat full of armed men came alongside. They jumped on deck with swords drawn, and ordered all of us into her immediately. I stepped below in hopes of getting something which would be of service to us, but the captain hallooed, "Go into the boat directly, or I will fire upon you." Thus compelled to obey, we were carried, together with 4 Spanish prisoners, to a small, low island or key of sand in the shape of a half moon, and partly covered with mangrove trees, which was about 1 mile from and in sight of my vessel. There they left 9 of us, with a little bread, flour, fish, lard, a little coffee, and molasses, 2 or 3 kegs of water, which was brackish, an old sail for a covering, and a pot and some other articles no way fit to cook in. Leaving us these, which were much less than they appear in enumeration, they pushed off, saying, "We will come to see you in a day or 2." Selecting the best place, we spread the old sail for an awning, but no place was free from flies, mosquitoes, snakes, the venomous skinned scorpion, and the more venomous centipede. Sometimes they were found crawling inside of our pantaloons, but fortunately no injury was received. This afternoon the pirates hove their vessel out by the Exertion and cleaned one side, using her paints, oil, etc. for that purpose. To see my vessel in that situation, and to think of our prospects, was a source of the deepest distress. At night we retired to our tent, but having nothing but the cold damp ground for a bed, and the heavy dew of night penetrating the old canvas, the situation of the island being 50 miles from the usual track of friendly vessels, and 135 from Trinidad, seeing my owner's property so unjustly and wantonly destroyed, considering my condition, the hands at whose mercy I was, and deprived of all hopes, rendered sleep or rest a stranger to me. Friday, 4th. Commenced with light winds and hot sun. Saw a boat coming from the Exertion, apparently loaded. She passed between 2 small keys to northward, supposed to be bound for Cuba. At sunset a boat came and inquired if we wanted anything, but instead of adding to our provisions, took away our molasses, and pushed off. We found one of the Exertion's water casks, and several pieces of plank, which we carefully laid up, in hopes of getting enough to make a raft. Saturday, 5th. Pirates again in sight, coming from the eastward. they beat up alongside their prize, and commenced loading.